3, 2, 1, go. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here taking a look at the responses to my video on the no physical, no buy argument that I put out yesterday, because despite the fact that I thought that it was, well, generally this is a pretty stupid idea of mine, I thought this would be an open and shut case, but I was completely and utterly wrong. Like, I'm surprised at how many counter arguments actually came up. Admittedly, I did miss a fair few things, which is why I'm here to come and take a closer look at it right now. So I've got two tabs open. I've got the comment section of my actual video, which I'll scroll down to, and I've got the Reddit tab because someone actually submitted my video to Reddit. It's been about, how many hours is it now? It's been 6 hours since I put this video up, so obviously you won't be seeing this right away, but I'm going to be going through and just having a quick look at all the responses, and hopefully this will record fine via Open Broadcaster software so I can just send it straight up to the internet. But anyway, here we go. So I'll just scroll down and let my comments load. I haven't checked them for about half an hour, but, well, if there's anything new, I can just respond to it right out, can't I? So if we'll just hurry up and load. Hang on, I'll refresh the page. And shut myself up. There we go. Okay, so hang on. We've got a comment and review, so let's ask about this. I'm not having been... Sorry. Okay, let's try and read this without laughing. I'm not having... I'm sorry, Simply TJB. I'm pretty sure this guy watches my videos on the regular, because I recognize the name, but I can't get through the first 4 words of that sentence. Okay. I'm not... Oh, okay. This isn't funny. I know this isn't funny, but... Okay. Okay, let's try this again. I'm not having been against digital since I took the plunge and bought a 64GB memory card and filled it up about a week into owning it. Before this, I had 16GB and that barely held anything. I do like having physical copies because it's great for collection purposes, and if a game gets released for PS4 and Vita, I usually go PS4 because it's physical and I can just remote play. If I enjoy a game to a point where I want to play it out of the house, I'll purchase a Vita version. As an owner of the Metal Slime 2000, that's the Dragon Quest Builders Special Edition Vita, which is actually kind of relevant to this. I don't have any qualms with getting a digital and a copy of Dragon Quest Builders since I already have a physical release and I want to try reading Moonspeak to play it. You know, that makes some sort of sense. The main argument being made there is that he likes having games for collection purposes, and this is brought up a couple of times in the comments. So, bringing up a game for collection purposes, admittedly, this is a bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to this sort of argument, isn't it? Because if, say, let's just say, for example, that enough people buy Dragon Quest Builders to the point where Square Enix thinks it's worth the time to publish a physical Vita version. They might not, they might. Let's just say they sell enough copies of Dragon Quest Builders so that they end up releasing a physical Dragon Quest Heroes 2 version. So, this guy gets another physical game to buy because he paid for the digital version. That's some people who will wholeheartedly stick to this point of no physical, no buy. Yeah, you get what I mean. Basically, if you support people enough by buying their games, you will get more physical games to buy. So, you know, it's probably a good thing for collectors, because you would assume collectors have a lot of money, wouldn't you? Because collectors would be able to spend a lot of money on physical games. Like, then again, I mean, the YouTube ad money and stuff like that gives me a fair bit of money to spare for imports and stuff like that. I've got like a huge drawer just full of cases of imports, but, you know, people like this would have to spend a lot of money in order to maintain a collection, right? So you'd think they'd have enough money to go and buy the digital version too to guarantee that they'd get more physical versions, or at least get a chance of getting more physical versions in the future. Same deal with limited run games. But anyway, I'll just approve this comment so it actually shows up on the video, and then we'll head back and shut myself up again. Thank God I actually turned off my system sound, but anyway, down we go. Okay, let's see. People like physical products. It's not rocket science. As you can see, I've replied to a lot of these comments, and I'll probably be reading most of my comments out wholesale, but if I think of something else to say over the top, then I will. But basically, people like physical products. It's not rocket science. I only buy new releases if they have a physical copy. If I have to buy digitally, I'll wait for a heavy discount, which, you know, his choice, his money, sure, but as I say here, by waiting so long, your sale has a much lower chance of factoring into the should we do more games now bracket after the game's out. I'll expand on this a little bit because generally the first month sales of the game are 80 to 90% of the sales that a game's going to get, or at least a very large margin. When you've got games on Steam that stick around for like 5 years and get incredibly popular and have like massive sales and all that, then that ratio skews a little bit, but still, the first week sales-ish, maybe the first month, is definitely where the absolute majority of your sales are going to happen. So most developers will base whether or not to do more games in general, not just digital, physical, but just in general, around those first month sales. So, yeah, if you don't buy the game right away, you're not exactly not supporting the game, but at the same time, the longer you wait, the less impact your purchase is going to have, obviously. So, and as I said there, and that is the consequence of their decision not to release a physical copy. That's what the other guy said. And then I said, and we bear the full brunt of that consequence. A brunt. What the fuck is a brunt? I need to learn to check my comments before I submit them. Jesus Christ. They don't get the numbers to justify localizing more games, so we don't get more games. So yeah, we are really the ones that suffer here when you think about it. I mean, sure, we do kind of suffer if we buy the games and we don't get any more games in the process anyway, but at the same time, we are going to have the games to begin with if we don't buy them in the first place, so it is a little bit of a catch-22, isn't it? I mean, technically we're actually getting games out of it, and it's not a gamble like Kickstarter is. So, anyway, I go on to say, they don't get the numbers to justify localizing more games, so we don't get more games. As I said in the video, the people who refuse to buy because there's no physical copy screw it up for the people who do. Which is technically true. A couple of people bring up a problem with this argument, and while I can understand where you're coming from, at the same time, if enough people hold off on buying a physical copy to the point where the developers are like, oh, we just won't bother localizing any games anymore because we don't see that we have any audience, then that's a problem, you know? I mean, if, say, just for example, again, broad strokes over the entire community, which is a really bad idea, but straight down the middle, 50% will buy a game if it's got a physical copy, and 50% won't, and only 50% buys that copy, and say that those numbers are small. Like, we're talking, say, like 20,000 people all up, and only 10,000 buy it, and they don't think it's enough. Those 10,000 are enough to justify localizing the next game, let alone localizing the next game and putting out a physical run. So, you know, I already made this argument, but we'll move on. And he says here, so, hypothetically speaking, if you did something that I didn't like, and by if you, he means me, if you did something that I didn't like and I stopped watching your videos because of it, I'm ruining it for everyone else because you may not be able to keep up enough views to continue making videos. I never took you for the unreasonable sort. Well, that is actually true when you think about it. I mean, if I stopped getting views altogether, if a ton of people left my channel and I was only getting like 50 views for every video I did, it would be kind of unreasonable for me to continue. Like, I mean, I do this a lot. Like, the reason why I put out so many videos and get so much content done, and the reason why I am able to get things like Vita review copies in the first place is because I actually get views. So if I have to, like, dump a couple of $100 a month extra into getting this channel done, it's going to drain my wallet like nobody's business, and I might not be able to financially support myself actually doing this anymore. So if 90% of my audience, or just a big bunch of my audience didn't like something I did and then walked away, but then there were people who still liked what I did, even if they were relatively minor, I probably wouldn't be able to do this anymore. Like, I really wouldn't. So, you know, you guys' views are pretty much the major reason why I keep doing this. I mean, sure, I love the Vita, I love the games on it, but if I didn't have like $500 to buy a new video capture Vita or get my other one repaired, or, you know, if I didn't have your guys' views to justify getting review copies so I didn't have to spend like $300 every couple of months or something, and, you know, just ridiculous amounts of money to get every single game for Vita, then I wouldn't have a channel anymore, really, because I wouldn't be able to afford to keep it up. But, you know, you guys, The amount of money you guys bring in via ad revenue pays for my broadband every month. That's about how much I get, roughly. So, and considering I'm in Australia, that's actually a pretty big bill, but at the same time, yeah, you guys are pretty much the reason I keep doing this, because in a way, you're helping me out, and I'm helping you out, and I like helping people out, and you obviously like helping me out, so, bit off topic, but we'll continue. So, just because it's digital only, you're going to hold out on your next favourite game. That's a weird, out-of-nowhere argument that literally makes no sense, and then the guy actually replies to it down here. So, yeah. Maybe the game instead of the digital-only game would have been my favourite game. Yeah, that's right. Like, that's absolutely right. Like, how could he possibly know if the game's going to be his favourite game anyway? I don't know. Maybe if it was a game he really liked and it was like an expanded version. So, you know, like Toukiden Kiwami, which was an unfortunate situation, but... Anyway, moving on. You're still blaming people for avoiding undesirable business practices, whether you say it on individual or whole, it's no less unreasonable. That's kind of right, I guess. And we do make a bit of an argument down here about, if you... Well, basically, yeah, I did kind of get confused about what he meant by undesirable and unethical meaning different things, and this guy is actually relatively intelligent. I'll give him that. He's pretty good at making his argument. But yeah, it's an undesirable practice to them, and basically, I had nothing left to say here. If you want to protest an undesirable business practice by not buying a game and lessening our chances of getting more, go right ahead. That's, like, I don't know any other way to respond to this. I really don't. It's a weird thing to say. I don't know, I'll just move along. That's, yeah, if I don't know, it has to be my response to that, so be it. I'm not gonna lie and pretend I'm more intelligent than I really am. Koji Tomino added on to the end of this little conversation here. What consequence? The Vita is practically a dead system out of Japan. Every retailer, except GameStop, is clearing it off the shelves to where it may as well never existed. Any Vita game that we get is essentially a gesture of goodwill. If people refuse to buy a digital version out of principle and adversely affects the sales, the developers and publishers shrug their shoulders, drop support for the Vita, and move on to ventures that will make them money. The only people to suffer are the consumers. This is extremely anti-consumer when you think about it. Like that very last sentence, the only people that suffer are the consumers. Aren't you a consumer? Like, don't you want what's best for us? What's best for us, technically, is more games. Like, sure, you have to pick a bit of a less between two evils. A lesser of two evils here. And just, how is us getting more games worse than us getting less games while whining, well, not so much whining, but complaining about not getting physical versions? I don't understand how only having digital games is the lesser of two evils. Is the more of two evils, I should say, sorry. Why would anyone who doesn't want to buy something care... Let me try this again. The sentence is a little confusingly written. Why would anyone who doesn't want to buy something care if they don't get more of something they don't want? Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm just a bit of an idiot. Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. Why would anyone who doesn't want to buy it care if they're not getting any more of what they don't want? I'm not entirely sure what that relates to, though. YouTube used to make it so that, like, the name they were replying to would show up in the comment. I don't understand why it's not there anymore. Exactly. People need to stop with the petty, unnecessary attitude. Half of these don't even end up trading the game and making use of the physical copy. They don't even look at the box after they get into the game. Just buy the fucking game. It's 100% the same game. This guy's not right, completely right, but he is right when he says it's 100% the same game, because it is. Like, there are very few situations where it's not, and that's mainly because of technical issues that shouldn't have happened, aka the Ratchet & Clank trilogy in Europe, which I have a copy of, and which I suffered through Ratchet & Clank crashing every time you tried to swap a level on a planet. So, you know, that's a way it was different from the digital version, and it sucked, and it shouldn't have happened. So, you know, don't blame the game, blame the developers. But he says something again about collectors, and it really is down to personal preference when it comes to collecting as well. But you'd think that the people who buy the physical copies would have enough money to chip into the digital copies, even if they don't have the space to play them. So, you know, that's a thing. And, yeah, we'll just move on. If everything coming out digitally now on Vita, then I'd rather not buy any more game on Vita. It's not worth it, too many heartbreak. It's not a very good comment, honestly. That's why you research a game before you what does this have to do with anything? Moving on. I don't really care if it's digital or physical, I just go buy the freaking game and have fun. Good for you. I would definitely buy digital if the prices were different. Digital games are... God, this is a long comment. I haven't actually seen this one. Digital games should always be cheaper than physical. You can't resell them. You technically don't own them. And it's not just Vita. I was looking at Xenoblade X, which is 8,300 yen digitally or 2,800 yen physically from Amazon. Digital prices are rarely discounted in comparison to real stock. Well, Japan has a really weird video game market where prices go up and down depending on the quality of the game. Best example is that I can think of recently, at the very least, is Metal Gear Solid Extreme Versus Force. Oh wow, okay. Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme Versus Force, because that game's price tanked. It started out like full retail for Japan, which is like 7,000 yen or something. Like, Japanese games have really weird prices to start off with. I don't know how they determine it. But as soon as people realized how bad that game was in the sense that it had basically no content, no free battle, no online play, no anything like that, prices dropped like a rock. And Bandai Namco turned around and said something along the lines of, we don't like this. This gets in the way of our business plan. Let's salvage this thing. And then they did the patches for the arcade mode and some extra free battle stuff. And the prices actually went back up for new copies. And it's the same thing. I'm going to read the rest of this comment and reply to it, but if I've already made the argument against it, then, well, I'll just continue. But anyway. Another example, Idolmaster Platinum Stars, 700 yen plus 2,100 yen shipping, 8,800 yen total, digital price, 20 yen less. Italia Charlie, 45 yen plus 1,137 yen shipping, 5,600 yen total, digital is 5,500 yen. So what incentive is there to own the game digitally? Well, that's the thing. The only incentive there is to own the game. I mean, I guess people are sort of in this mindset that games are so expensive that they want to buy the physical versions and then sell them on, but I hate thinking in this mindset personally, because what if it turns out that I really, really like a game I buy physically? Like, I don't actually own that many physical games. My PS4 has a 2TB hard drive in it. I've got a PC with like 1,300 Steam games on it. The majority of them were bought on like Steam bundles or stuff like that. Humble bundles, or whatever you want to call them. And my Vita collection is all digital, mainly because review copies only come digital, because I wouldn't expect them to send me a review copy. But if I wanted to buy a review game and I was tight on money, just in general, right? If I wanted to buy a Vita game or something that was physical, right? I just said review game there, didn't I? If I wanted to buy a Vita game and it was physical, and I liked it, and I really liked it, but I didn't want to like trade it in or return it after I finished it, or after I did how much over I wanted with it, because I like the game that much that I don't want to sell it off. I mean, I have a feeling these people work on the same sort of mindset where they just trade games back in once they're done and get other ones. And I've heard that some people actually, like, what's the word, exploit this? But yeah. Anyway, I'll just read the rest of the comment before I make any more arguments, because I'm wasting too much time here as it is. It's almost 20 minutes. I'm not even through half the comments. Jesus. So what incentive is there to own the game digitally? The fact that I don't need to change discs. That's not actually a problem these days, but whatever. Okay, there's that. Material possessions. God, I have enough material possessions already. I don't need more. But I can't just spend that amount for a digital copy. I need a PSN card, or either in yen or USD depending on the store and game. Well, technically you wouldn't be able to, like, get other regions' PSN cards without a lot of effort or something like that. So, you know, it's generally, it's not that hard to get your own region's currency, and even then it's not that hard to get US currency, because that's what I do. I just use Amazon US with a US delivery address. But I need a PSN card, so the games are actually costing me more, and I'm left with an excess amount of money that I might never use. This might not be a problem for someone who buys a lot of games, but I wouldn't even buy 10 per year. Really? I mean, you're comparing Idolmaster Platinum Stars and Italia Charlie Plus and Xenoblade X. You sound like you have some pretty wide taste. I'm surprised you only buy 10 games a year. On PS4, I don't mind as much because I don't buy a lot, and I don't buy a lot for it, and it has a 500 gig HDD. If I didn't have to worry about storage space, I'd be more inclined to go digital. Even then, I think digital prices need to be cheaper than physical. Well, that's true, technically, but brick and mortar still holds a bit of a stranglehold when it comes to physical games these days, because you charge less than the physical stores. The physical stores are starting to get mad, and there's still a bunch of, I don't want to say the word uneducated, but casuals. I'll say casuals. There's still a lot of casuals that will go into a store and buy a game physically, and they do make up a fair amount of sales. So, maybe that's a reason to argue for physical copies of games after all, but, then again, Vita. So, yeah. It's mainly a problem with GameStop and, like, retailers like that. If retailers like that died and we could go back to just, like, having mother and father shops, or mom and pop shops as they call them, just across the world again, where the digital could realistically charge cheaper without the people who run these stores getting mad about it, then generally digital games would get cheaper. But it's GameStop, basically. Blame GameStop. Blame EB Games, blame them, it's their fault. Even then, I think digital prices need to be cheaper than physical. It doesn't have to be a huge discount, but I want to feel like I'm buying a digital game where it isn't counterproductive to do so. I don't like changing cartridges, and I would be more inclined to play the games if I could just select them from the menu, but it's an expensive price to pay for laziness. I guess that's true, but then again, there are sales and stuff like that, but then again, same deal, really. Then again, this person probably shops in Japanese stuff a lot more, judging by the fact that they've used 3 price comparisons for Japan. And again, Japan's game market is a lot more different than ours, so it's not something that I can really draw comparisons on. So, I'll just move on by saying that Japan's market is a bit different than the one he or she, you can never tell by the avatar. Like, 99% of female avatars on the internet are by men, so, What's the reply? My opinion too. I live in Japan and I do not need to spend the extra shipping fees. So digital is always my last option in any game unless it's PlayStation Plus. That's right, basically. Yeah. No argument there. All my Vita games are digital. I couldn't imagine switching between all of them if I went physical. I think people who won't buy unless it's physical never really wanted the game in the first place. That's a decent point. I mean, people could still want the game, but still not want to buy it physically. It is a bit of a straw man, more or less. I think that's the word for it, but still, I'm not... He's right. Like, if you really wanted the game, if you really wanted to support the game, the franchise, the developer, or the platform, but you wouldn't buy it just because it went digital only, then do you really want it in the first place? Fair question. I kind of think the whole not buying digital games... But buying games that are digital-only thing is a case of a vocal minority. Most people are pretty happy to buy digital-only titles. I have a lot of digital titles, including some that have physical versions. I'm more interested in just what's more affordable at the time I buy it. I'll definitely be buying Dragon Quest Builders when it releases. I need a second 64GB memory card. Yeah, mate, you might want to be careful with that, because I've had a 64GB memory card breakdown. But yeah, he is kind of right about it being a vocal minority, mainly because I imagine it's the vocal minority speaking up. But then again, I can't know for sure how many people would who support no physical, no buy, and how many people don't. So I can't know for sure, and even if I do put up a poll, it's likely to be not so much inconclusive as it is incomplete, because you can't get everyone to answer that question. But we will continue on with the comments. That's a fairly good question, though. Vocal minority... Then again, the vocal minority are the ones that are loudest, aren't they? Like, the majority that are happy about what's going on don't usually raise their voice. So, it's kind of like feminism. The crazy ones stand out the most. But, except the people who want no physical, no buy, the people who support that aren't crazy. Just, they stand out the most because they're the ones that speak the most, basically. Very well said, but a few other things pointing out. I know this guy because he actually posts a lot of comments. Remember Sword Art Online? Despite the shit translation, it's remained at the top of every single Vita digital sales chart for a year ever since the release, even being the highest selling Vita game overall in 2014. And although it was digital only, it convinced Bandai there's plenty of money to be made on Vita. They aren't afraid to localize stuff for Vita anymore, which is a very good point, admittedly. But then again, a lot of people will bring up, like, previous games, and it's just, you never know how much audience that games you release right now are going to get, which is a little bit annoying, but it's something I can understand from a business perspective. That's also quite funny, though, because my most popular video is a Sword Art Online video, which is kind of great. It was a pretty shit video, and I wish I did better, but oh well, people saw enough of it, because, I mean... The amount of views I got in that video is ridiculous. I'm pretty sure it's in the 700,000s now, but I would like to check. The localization of the PS4 Vita version of Star Ocean Second Evolution, my favorite PSP game, is very important to me, so I'll support the localizations without question. Even though I honestly couldn't give two fucks about Dragon Quest, I'm pretty sure this guy's got the right idea. Like, if he wants to see Star Ocean Second Evolution's updated version, the best way to do it is to support Square Enix's efforts. Because, I mean, what else can he do? Sure, he can ask for it. Sure, he can start a petition, but how much effort is that really going to draw? Best thing you can do is throw money their way and then send them a message afterwards on social media or something like that. What is the game you're playing? Never mind that. I don't really care about Dragon Quest builders, but I can't help but get frustrated over Bandai Namco not localizing God Eater 2 physically for the United States. Yeah, that is weird. I don't get what they're trying to do there. Like, North America, not only do we not get a physical version of God Eater Resurrection or God Eater 2, but we don't get God Eater 2 with the God Eater Resurrection free copy, while Europe does on the Vita. It's weird. I don't know why they did that. Did they not see that many physical sales in North America? I mean, maybe they don't, because, you know, you see those pictures where it's like, you know, a single stack of games, and people always ask me why I remove those on r/Vita because I'm a moderator there, and it's against the rules. Like, I mean, we could argue to change the rules a bit, but I hate how those pictures are posted mainly for circle jerks, and, you know, sometimes they even get reposted, so, you know, that's why I remove them. But, you know, if you want to talk to me about that, send a post on the subreddit or something. Moving along. I would like a physical copy of Mare. I'll buy a digital if I have to. I've been trying to avoid digital copies on the Vita because of how stupid the PSN management is, and he hates switching accounts. So that makes sense, because that's annoying. I've only got one Vita right now, and I have to spend like 5 minutes formatting the memory card and swapping it over to the Japanese account. And this is if I don't decide to back up the 15 gigs of games on there that I've already got on there. This is why I'm hoping to get a second Vita, because, just a Vita I can put off to the side to keep my own games on, so I can play my own games when I feel like it and not have to rely on the video capture one. Because if I don't care much on a video capture Vita's memory card, then I can just format it, go to another, what's the thing I'm looking for? Go to another region, do videos there, and then go back and not really suffer any ill effects. So I really do need to buy myself a Vita just so I can, you know, do that and have it be easier on my production schedule. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying things like first world problems, but come on. If you've had to swap regions on Vita, you know just how painful it is to have to do that over and over and over and over again. Oh, it's that Simply TJB guy again. Oh, yeah, it's the same comment. I'll just move past that one. People who are complaining about the game not being physical, just buy the Japanese version. See, this doesn't tell the North American people that you want the game, because they can't see how many copies of their game have been imported unless they're very specifically looking for them. And there's only one case I can think of that's true, and that's Dead or Alive Extreme 3, because Koei Tecmo were alerted to the fact that basically PlayAsia was trolling everyone on the internet and saying, hey, we're going to be selling this in English, and they are pretty much the only people who do at the moment, so they're just, hopefully Tecmo Koei is paying attention to how many copies they sold via that website. But any other publisher probably isn't paying any attention to that at all. So God only knows. Because generally the only things... Well, they might be able to determine how many copies they shipped out to a specific source and how many times they have to ask for new stock. So maybe that would be an indicator of how many people are importing. But then again, can't be sure. Don't know how to dig that deep into the industry. Honestly, I went on a similar rant when it came to the no dub, no buy people, and that wasn't even exclusively for the Vita. I mean, I'm slightly irritated if games tend to do the opposite of what the no dub, no buy people ask for, but I still buy the games because I want more of them to come out. If I'm lucky, they might add a minor free DLC for people that would rather listen to the original dubs instead of the localized dubs. Sad part is the people I personally know that happen to be no dub, no buys never even listen to the dialogue in the games and just read the text with their Vitas and 3DSs muted. That's actually a good point. No dub, no buy is another problem in this industry. I mean, I don't understand why people are so insistent on having to hear English voices. It's very strange. Like, it's a nice effort to go to, but having to pay all the voice actors for that and having to do all the extra effort to get that to work, especially when you've got contracts for VAs and game developers in Japan and stuff that are really, what's the word I'm looking for, really pedantic and make you release the game with very little adjustments to what is inside the game data-wise in terms of like voice acting or stuff like that. So, you know, a lot of people don't understand that sometimes English dubs are impossible, sometimes Japanese dubs are impossible, And it's not the fault of the people who try to localize the game in the first place. It's the fault of the Japanese game developers, the publishers, the voice actors, the voice actor agencies, because there's a bloody ton of those. And it's a fault of all the contracts between all of them. So, you know, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So, you know, if you're watching this video and you've watched like the half an hour that I've been going on about this for, if you've been watching this and you come up to this point and think in the future, I'm not going to buy it because it doesn't have a dub, think about what the publishers would do if they had to run across one of these games that requires them to have a Japanese dub or nothing else, but requires them to record an English dub, or just requires no voices at all for whatever stinking reason. Like, imagine if they just want to bring over a game really cheaply, and that's the only way they can justify it in their budget. Imagine that, and imagine how bad they would feel if even just a tiny little project like that wouldn't get very many sales because people insist on no dub, no buy. Just imagine that for a minute, and just, you know, rethink your position after that. Alright? I'm not saying that you don't have to compromise your principles or anything, and I am getting on to how I was in the last video, but yeah, I'm not saying compromise your principles, I'm just saying think about what the developers are going through in that situation at the very least. If I can't pull a game off my shelf and play it, then I'm going to have an issue with it, especially with the Vita. The Vita is my favorite system, and I like to collect for my favorite systems. I've settled with digital games to several Vita games, like its Hollow Fragment, Cyber Sleuth, and the God Eater games, but I'm drawing the line. If Gundam Extreme vs. Force, if that game, a little bit weird formatting there, mate. If that game doesn't get a physical release, I'm importing it. Well, for one, it's been confirmed that it's not getting a physical release. I want all my Gundam games to be on my shelf, not any of this digital bullshit. And I say what I think is quite rightly here. If the Vita is your favorite system, why would you somewhat arbitrarily restrict yourself from supporting it by not buying non-physical games? And I actually wrote that incorrectly. I edited the non there, so... And he says it's for collection's sake. I'm always against the digital only release, but if I'm not offered another choice, then I'll buy it. The only two kinds of games I will not buy digitally would be a Tales or a Gundam game. I need to have those up on my shelf, so if I got to import them to have that, then so be it. Yeah, you sound like the sort of person that has enough money to buy the games digitally anyway, even if you don't play them via that route. I guess it's just... Really, he says right there that the Vita is his favorite system, but he's not going to buy the North American efforts. Or at the very least, he's going to buy the North American efforts if he has to. But he says he's not going to buy Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs. Force. Which is really disappointing, because this is the first Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs. game that's actually come over here. So not buying it means that it's just another notch of the interest. Because... I only just recently got into Extreme vs. Force. Or Extreme vs. just in general, really. Because I actually got a PlayStation 3 somewhat recently. And I've been actually playing Extreme vs. Force with an Australian Skype community. And I've been enjoying the shit out of it. And hearing that this game was going to get localized made my week. You have no idea. It made my goddamn week that they were bringing it over. So, to see people that won't buy it just because there's no physical copy is a little bit disappointing to me. Because... if enough people don't buy Extreme vs. Force, then they might not bring the next Extreme vs. game over, even if it does turn out to be another spin-off like Force was, because the Japanese market's just like that. They're keeping the main arcade iterations in the arcade, because that's where they're getting a ton of their money at the moment. So, you know, that's just the thing. Yeah, as I said here, the North American branch can't take into account imported Asian copies. That's exactly what I thought. So anyway... I feel that this is a double-edged sword. I understand your point about supporting the releases, but honestly, how many games have gone to physical release after having a strong digital release? That doesn't happen at all, really. Like, that just never happens. It really doesn't. Like, there are a few games that have thanks to Limited Run, and Limited Run is like the very first time this sort of thing's ever happened. I imagine that there are a couple of other things. Like, I think Hataru no Nikki is getting a physical release in US and Europe, and I don't think it had a physical release before. But, well, because it's coming with, Yamawari. But that is still a weird thing to say. Like, I mean, I'm arguing for games getting physical releases after strong support for digitally released games. But chances are you're not going to get a game physically if it's already been released digitally. If they do, that's great. Like, absolutely. Like, if Namco Bandai decides that it's worth doing a small print run to sell to like collectors or something, all the more power to them. But yeah, I'll read the rest of the comment. I believe it's pretty few and far between. I personally want to have physical releases for all my games, but I still end up buying digital games because I don't want to miss out on great games. Good for you. It's just a shitty situation no matter how you look at it. Completely correct. Soon everything for the Vita will end up like the I Am Setsuna debacle. If there is interest, then we'll do it. That's basically been the tagline for the last few years. He is actually right. I hate how Square Enix seems to be just like, they keep saying if there's interest, we'll do it. That's how it's been since Final Fantasy Type O, isn't it? Like, God, Final Fantasy Type O was the biggest kick in the balls, wasn't it? Like, Jesus Christ, I'm still pissed about that. I really am. Like, the PSP community was the biggest community who wanted that game. And the next thing they do is they release it on PS4 and Xbox One as a HD version, claiming that the guy who was developing the HD remaster had his site going bad. Oh man, Guru Larry, if he ever ends up watching this, he needs to do a fact hunt. 5 stupid reasons some games were never made. But yeah, anyway. After the first Sword Art Online game sold pretty well digitally, the sequel game got the physical treatment. So no, I don't think it's far. That's actually a good example. That really is. It's a shame Lost Song turned out to be a piece of shit. Sure, that's one instance, and that wasn't for the original release, but instead for its sequel. Also, I think using SAO is sort of a cop-out, because in the States it's super popular and was very popular at the time of its release. Whether or not the game was good or not, they knew the overall brand of SAO would sell decently. It just turned out that the game has more to offer than fan service. If we're talking about Lost Song, it does not have more to offer than just fan service. I swapped Asuna to a bikini as soon as I could, and that was the end of that, basically. The conversation and anger is coming from titles such as Dragon Quest Builders, which still has popular but a small fan base, but is regulated to a digital release, which isn't a bad thing, but it gives a lack of choices which consumers hate to have. True. Which has led to the boycotting of certain digitally released games, which is true but bad. Is it right, though? I don't think so, but it's going to continue regardless of great digital sales because interest in the Vita in the States has dropped dramatically, which is, again, true. And, again, this is actually a double-edged sword. He is right. Like, if they want to bring over games and not spend too much money on to the point where they can actually make a profit off them, they want to release them digital only. But if they do, they'll get less copies. It really is just a double-edged sword. But that's kind of why I'm trying to take one of the edges off the sword. But then again, I guess that's why they call it a sword, because imagine trying to hit someone with one edge of a sword and it's no less than a slight breeze on the back of their neck. But anyway, moving along. We're getting close to the end of this, but then there's a bunch of other comments on the other tab. Speaking of Square, watching this game footage makes me wish they bring Iron Hand to the PSN Classics. I agree. That's a pretty good game. Hopefully there's a physical version for Asia with English subs like Digimon. I'd heavily prefer something tangible and that isn't reliant on Sony supporting the same system's online services forever. That's true. But I realize that there's a big comment missing from here that I did a really big reply to. Except it's, yeah, it's missing. That's a little bit strange. Alright, back to where I was. Yeah, but as I'll get to that, I'll go and have a look at my actual comments screen, and I should be able to find it in there. Square Enix could decide on no physical later on, regardless of how well or poorly Dragon Quest Builders does. Maybe it does well as digital only in the West, and then what? The boycotters get to miss out on a potentially good game due to their principles, while everyone else has fun. One accomplishment. I hope no Steam gamer says that really hypocritically. Yeah, he's right. It's just, you know, the people who boycott games do miss out on them. And I mean, it's funny calling games a boycott because just every time I hear the word boycott, I think of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So, you know, they'll think they don't have any audience. Publishers only see sales numbers. We won't get more game. Asshole. I hear the exact same shit when it's censorship no buy. And I say below, apples and origins. Origins? What the fuck am I saying? Oh yeah, there's more comments down there. Good. Yeah, it is basically apples and oranges though. It's a bad comparison because censorship is a lot more prevalent now. Censorship is a lot more out in the open. So censorship is actually editing the contents of a game, while digital only, no physical, no buy is all about games just getting released on different formats. Censorship is still bad though. It's just these arguments don't apply as much. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to say to that, honestly. It's just Then again, like, the games that would require censorship in the first place do actually have an audience. I mean, there are people out there who like fan service games for the fan service. So, there is always an audience there. It is always relatively small, but, I mean, they do have an audience. Publishers only see sales numbers. Well, that's the thing. Like, people who put out fan service games, they know that they're not going to see very high numbers. Hell, people who put games out on the Vita in general know they're not going to see very high numbers in the first place when it comes to censorship, but people know, these publishers who send out games that might require censorship know for a fact that they have an audience and they're specifically aiming for the audience who likes the fan service, and censoring stuff means that people will get very unhappy about it. So, it is a bit more similar than I thought. It's just, maybe it isn't as much apples and oranges as much as it is red apples and green apples, but it is a bit of a problem. And then again, we won't get more games with the industry the way that it is right now. That is a pretty interesting thing to say, because even without, like, the censorship, just like people are campaigning to get fan service games banned. Well, not so much campaigning actively for them as much as pointing them and wagging their finger and saying, no, 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 you can't do that. Sometimes I hate this industry. People should love digital-only games since the Vita memory cards are so cheap and have such a large capacity. Sarcasm. This guy really did, yeah. Also, knocking people for not having enough money. Gamers aren't renowned for having a lot of money. Well, that's the thing. Gaming is an expensive hobby. Like, it's not like buying a DVD player and a bunch of DVDs to watch movies, or buying books, or buying model kits. Like, I own a bunch of Gundams, and I mean, the only reason I've spent as much money as I had on them is because I've bought like 20 of them in one go, and the delivery prices from Japan are freaking insane. But yeah, it's, gaming is a pretty expensive hobby to begin with, because, you know, games are $60 US, like, for the really big ones. For indie games that I've only just recently come along, it's a bit cheaper, but, I mean, for the past 20-something years, it's been like $65.99. I remember seeing a $65.99 NES game, like in an old pamphlet from years and years ago, so it's like, gaming's always been a bit of an expensive hobby, so it's like, if you don't have the money, then it must be a really painful being a gamer, I have to say. Like, sure, I can understand people falling on hard times, but when you don't make that much money to begin with, and you're spending a lot of money on games, then didn't really pick the best hobby, did you, mate? I do feel sorry for people who don't have a lot of money and want to get into games, because it is a very expensive process, but at the same time, it's kind of like setting up a bear trap, stepping in the bear trap, and then blaming the bear trap making company for making the bear trap that you willingly stepped in yourself. Let's load the rest of the comments. I know there's not that many more. Now, what happened to... Yeah, that's irrelevant. I agree with all your points, me, but you've forgotten an argument I've been hearing quite some time from ignorant people. So if the game is just 250 meg, why would I pay full price digitally for it? Yes, trust me, there are people who judge the game by its size, thinking that if the game's file size is small, the game's content is small, its graphics aren't good, or it just doesn't deserve the digital full price, or for whatever reason they believe in. I was very surprised to find out that there are self-proclaimed gamers who judge a game's quality based on its size. Yes, this is idiotic. Like, you can go download NetHack, which has the shittiest graphics in the world, but the gameplay in that game is so stupid deep that most people don't make it through with it, without a strategy guide. Like, you could spend months trying to figure that game out. So, and that game is like 4 meg. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, you could remove the Windows version, just keep the terminal version around, and it's like a meg. It's all just, like, text characters. It's a little ridiculous. But they've actually, someone's actually replied down here. It's not about size, it's about a price. There's overpriced indie games in these days, and not indies as well. Sure, you shouldn't charge... I think this guy's... Yeah, this guy's Russian, because I just saw rubles. Sure, you shouldn't judge a game for its digital size in megabytes and gigabytes, but you should judge a game for its size in general. I'm looking at the PSN page right now. Persona 4 Golden costs roughly $9. Yes, the Russians get ridiculously low prices. I used to have someone who would buy me Steam games from Russia, and they would be ridiculously cheap. You have no idea, but I don't talk to him anymore, but he was a good guy, so, you know, if he ever ends up watching all the way through this, I'm not going to say who he is, because it's not someone I want to go getting bothered by or anything, but, you know, good guy, and I hope you're doing well with that game that you develop. But anyway, yeah, Tetris Ultimate, $13. Wow, you have Tetris Ultimate more expensive than Persona 4 Golden. Jesus, yeah, admittedly, that is pretty ridiculous. What game should I buy? Of course, P4G is an old game and it doesn't cost full price now, but in fact, it's $9 and one of the best games on Vita. Tetris is one of the best games ever made, in his opinion, but I can play it in a browser or something. It should be dirt cheap at this point. $13 for Tetris. No, thank you. And before you say, why don't just have both? Well, there are people in the world who can't buy every single game on PSN, as our beloved PS Vita YouTuber. Thank you! Please excuse us, especially when it comes to tons of indie titles. How many pixelated roguelikes can I buy instead of P4G? The answer is none. Nuclear Throne is more expensive, Rogue Legacy is more expensive, Crypt of the Necrodancer is even more expensive, but you can buy Brisk of Rain for 558 rubles. And he says he has 500 games on Steam, and as I just said, I had a guy who would buy me games off Steam, and they were stupid cheap. Like, 60 rubles is like cents. Even in Australian dollars, it's just cents. So him having 500 games on Steam is pretty remarkable. And, you know, considering that the games are so surprisingly expensive in Russia, because they have less working wage than us. Like, way less working wage. So there's a reason the games are less expensive over there. But, yeah, that is actually kind of ridiculous. Persona 4 Golden being cheaper than pretty much every other game on the store. That's interesting. That's really interesting. I imagine if people see this comment, they'll probably take it the wrong way. They'll probably take it the wrong way and, you know, assume that the Russians just get to buy every single game because that's extremely cheap. But I really hope that they don't do that. I liked this comment because I actually did a really long reply to this comment, which I'm probably going to just read out in full because, yeah. But this was actually a really intelligent comment and I felt it was worth the time replying to. So let's read it. Why are you justifying the price of memory cards just because it's not that much? Do you apply the same attitude when talking about PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live, saying it's a AAA title a year for access to online when alternatives have free online? There's also an issue with you saying publishers only see sales numbers. That's frequently false. Publishers know the amount of units shipped and the percentage of those shipments that have been sold. They can calculate the percentage of sales that are physical as opposed to digital. There are different arguments as well. When you're buying a digital copy of the game, you're buying a license to download and use it. Digital-only games on consoles have a timed existence. In the 7th generation of consoles, titles had very easy means of archiving their titles, while on the PC, games like Ruse or Deadpool, temporary or permanently removed from Steam and we could still archive them. PT was removed and could only be re-downloaded through a proxy server. Consoles are stepping up their stability to keep this from happening. Physical copies alleviate this issue. These are all good points, but they're all flawed. Let's get into why. To that first point about PS Plus, Xbox Live, and memory card prices. 2 reasons. It really isn't that much for a good-sized memory card in the grand scheme of the life of a system, working under the assumption that you don't have to replace it. A game and a half just isn't that much considering how many games you'll probably end up buying for the system anyway. I like to think I'm right on this, because games that you would end up buying, I mean, I kind of worked under the assumption that you would at least buy 1 or 2 new games every now and again, right? Because, you know, retail games are going to be the most popular games at the time. I imagine there are a few people who like hold out the discounts and all that, but surely someone sees a game that they think looks really good, they're really excited for, or they come to my channel and watch one of my videos and they're like, that game looks really, really good. I should go buy that despite the fact it's full retail price. I like to think that because, you know, physical game, like full price retail games are like $40. Indie games are anywhere between 10 and 20, and possibly 5, you know. There are outliers, like Frozen Synapse Prime was 25, for example, when it launched. And, yeah, so eventually, like, assuming that you would end up with, at the very least, 10 games over the course of a couple of years, at the very least, and hopefully most of those are retail, you would have spent a few $100 on games. And there is actually a comment further down below that kind of reflects this point back at me, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So you end up spending a fair amount of money just on games. So if you can't, like, put away a game and a half worth of budget for a 32GB memory card, or even wait for them to go on sale, because they do go on sale from time to time, then maybe, I don't know, maybe you should just, I hate to say manage your budget better, because it makes me sound like a bit of a rich hipster, but at the same time, it's like, you really can't just save money for a little while, and then stick that to a 32GB memory card, and then, you know, go and buy all the games you want. Just, honestly. I know there are some that can't, but at the same time, if you're going to be buying a gaming system, hopefully you're not just going to be playing one game on it. I said as I bought the Wii U for 2 games, one of which came out on the 3DS and one of which was censored, so I didn't end up buying it. Oh man, yeah, that Wii U is sitting on my desk right now in the form of my mouse and keyboard. But anyway, yeah, but as I said, you don't just get online play with PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live, and this is just me saying that you get those games with it and you get the online storage, which is a freaking great thing to have. The second point was, it's not flagrantly false to not bring up the fact that they see the shipments and the shipments sold, because I was talking about mainly the physical digital split, not the idea that, what's the word I'm looking for? They do see what sells physical and digital. Maybe there is a point to that, but at the same time, they still sell a lot of games, and maybe they sold like overwhelming amounts of digital games, and that's why they decided to do digital only, and buying more digital games might give them enough budget to consider doing a physical release again. It is a bit of a pain in the ass to figure out, because we don't know for absolutely sure what their thought processes are when they go into this sort of thing. But anyway, the third point is definitely the most interesting one, because as you can see, I've written an absolute ton of shit on this. But my point is basically that every console does have games that will eventually get lost to the ether if they're not properly archived. And getting into software archival is basically getting into piracy, because to back up all games that show up on digital systems like Xbox Live Arcade, or even old consoles like the NES, the Atari, stuff like that, you generally have to figure out your way around the copy protection systems, which means piracy. And eventually the only way to back up Vita games is going to have to be piracy at some point. Because the digital games, we don't have a way to get those games safely off the Vita yet. So eventually when the Vita gets cracked wide open, they'll be able to do that. But the second that happens, we lose all support given from all the third-party people that still make games, because they can still make them, especially in Japan. But then again, Japan might not pirate that much, because they say there's a sort of morale thing. Not so much a morality thing, more or less. And, they tend to be very heavy on that sort of stuff. But yeah, basically, every system will get cracked open eventually, and when they do, you can use that ability and time to back up as many digital games as possible. And while I hate to say this very specifically like this, an absolute ton of Vita games are available on other platforms. Like, a massive amount. Sure, there are versions you want to back up, like Muramasa Rebirth, for example, with the 4 DLCs. Those are exclusive to the Vita version, so therefore you probably want to either wait for a port to another system, or get them off the Vita and archive them as soon as possible. This is why I like emulators, by the way, because the chances of me getting an Atari 2600 in 20 years that still works is zero, basically. It'll be zero, and I won't be able to play Atari 2600 games. Why I'd want to play that when I'll probably be able to stick a plug into the back of my neck, a la the Matrix, and go into a virtual reality world, I don't know, but we'll get onto that when we get onto that in 20 years. But at the same time, it's just like, basically my argument against that point is give it time. And when the Vita finally does, not so much crash and burn, but come to a landing at the end of its lifespan, someone will crack it open, someone will get all the games off. But until then, we just have to wait. And they can already dump, physical cartridges. So, hopefully digital isn't that far behind. But at the same time, I don't mean hopefully as in... I don't mean far behind as in it'll be next year. I'm hoping far behind as in it'll be a few years into the future where we can, actually successfully archive them without actually losing anyone any sales, because a lot of pirates pirated the game instead of buying it, But then again, there is that old argument that people who pirate games aren't going to buy them, but anyway, we'll just move on. I am a follower of the no physical, no buy argument, because the memory cards are expensive. Same point as I mentioned earlier, but we'll continue. Mentioned this video was the opinion they're not overly expensive. I understand that some people are better off than others, to say that you should own a Vita if you can't afford it was a little annoying. I don't blame you, and I'm not mad about that. I completely understand this is a rant and you're angry and things don't come out as PR statements. I cannot afford every game that comes out new. I can buy about $40 of game stuff every 3 months. Jesus, guy. I honestly feel sorry for you. I don't, if I had, a bunch of money to... What the hell is that noise? If I had a bunch of money to spare, I'd send you a few bucks, just so you could buy something when it actually comes out instead of having to wait 3 months for it. But, yeah, I know I got... Yeah, I mean, I do have money, but at the same time, it's just, you know, I've got to try and save, because if I don't get another video capture Vita, I'll be back to my recording on my phone again. You don't want that. But can't afford whatever game that comes out. You know, when a company says a game will be digital only, I get extremely disappointed that I can't play a game I was looking forward to when it comes out because I can't afford a fucking memory card. That is why I make the no physical, no buy argument, because it forces me to buy something I don't want to even play something that I do want. It is just like Trump trying to make Mexicans pay for a war in America. It's stupid. 16 gig is 40, 32 gig is 70 in California, 64 gig is 130. Well, we're not recommending you buy a 64 gig, or at least I'm not, because mine broke, but it's kind of hard to talk to people like this. Not because they're crazy or anything like that, but $40 every 3 months is just painful. Like, I can't even imagine being a gamer on that sort of budget. Like, it would take me almost half a year to afford something like Doom. Or just any sort of, like, full retail game on the PC or something like that. I feel so sorry for this guy. Jesus. This is the main reason why the Vita memory card prices are ridiculous. Like, I keep hoping that Sony will eventually just give up and say, hey, look, here's a version of the Vita with an SD card slot. We're trusting you. You know, we know you're probably not well trustworthy, but we'll trust you anyway. I'm hoping they do that at the end of the Vita's life, actually. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine it's just coming to a stop. They bring out a new Vita with an SD card slot, and then it goes right back up in sales again. Imagine if they did that. That'd be great. There's a bunch of replies under here, though. So, because you can't afford a game, you support a movement that basically screws over everyone else who can pay for digital games. All of you should be grateful that these games are even being localized, considering how... This is a little bit too much, honestly. The gay. He's probably not gay. The guy said that he only gets $40 every 3 months. It is really hard to, like, come up with any reason. Like, the only thing I can really do is feel sorry about this guy, and making it a movement is a bit silly. Maybe by a small amount of people look at the people who buy games digitally still buying them, more games will be released digitally. They do it for Asia, where Vita does as well than Europe and the States, yada yada. It's not really very important. The best thing about having large digital sale numbers is that you can just point them and say, hey, does this justify your physical run? The companies releasing digital games just may well say yes. Compare that to not enough people buying digital-only games and more games not being released. I'm pretty sure I was replying to someone else and not the main guy. People buying digital-only games and more games not being released at all, let alone just digital. Just because a lot of people buy digitally doesn't lock down potential physical runs. Dragon Quest Builder is 250 meg and it's not even worth a physical buy. I am a follower of no physical, no buy if the game is a lot higher than slower than 2.5 gig, which is a sort of weird position to take, but at the same time it makes some sort of sense, I guess. In my opinion, if a company sees the digital release sold a lot, they'll be less inclined to make a physical version because they've already made their sales. It's kind of hard to reply to this comment because you don't know if he's like that other guy that said, well, should we release a physical run several months after the game's already come out and the hype machine is well and thoroughly died down, retired, and now is a museum? Also take into account the effort of manufacturing a physical version. It seems silly to make a physical version. Well, it kind of is when you think about it. I mean, if you take this in the context that, if they're not going to sell very many copies and it costs a ton, because as I've said in the previous video, it costs 4 times the amount to make a similar run of Vita games compared to a similar number of PS4 games, which is quite unfortunate, especially when the digital version requires little to no effort to sell compared to shipping a physical version. What I really want to do is tell companies that I want a physical version much more than a digital version, which you can do via, like, social media and stuff, but it's like a gigantic nest with like 500 something birds in it. You're not going to get heard over all the squeaking. The Vita doesn't sell physical games very well in the West. If you compare the physical versions with the digital, the West always shows there's no interest unless they're limited editions, and the rest of the comment goes over the rest of that. But basically, yeah, that is actually a pretty decent point to make. If physical special editions are actually a pretty decent thing to do, I wonder why more publishers don't do something like that. Like, the main release is digital, but if you want, like, some extra goodies and stuff, we'll manufacture a special edition for you. More people who reject a game just because it's digital will ultimately hurt our chances of video game like. Yep, I agree, but I wouldn't want to buy the games digital only because I wouldn't be able to play it. I understand that, but in this case, the game is only 250 meg. I do want to support them as a responsible customer. I can't justify buying a game that I can't play. And, it's the same guy who doesn't have that much money. It's unfortunate. I blame Sony for making the memory cards too expensive. The game fits in the 4 gig memory card and actually does fit on the Vita's internal memory. I have actually tried using that once or twice. It's alright. You know, it'd be great if they released one with like 32 gig internal memory, because how cheap is that these days, right? Like, how could you cut down on the Vita manufacturing costs a bit and put in an SD card slot, maybe some internal memory? That'd be great. I have an 8 gig memory card, which is Final Fantasy X2. Do you want size to counter spy? If you delete a save game, does it delete your data? I imagine this is just like a tech support. Yeah, that's basically just a tech support chain. There's another comment here. I swear I put a comment in here. A really long comment about something in general. Was that guy back up there? Yeah, I think it might have been that guy, but, hang on, I'm gonna go check my comments. I know I've got a more in-depth comment manager in my video manager somewhere. Let me go have a look. Comments. Huh. Maybe not. I guess that's the end of these comments. There's a bunch more over on the other tab as well, and there's another very important point I want to make there. So, yeah, we're an hour in. Then how did you find this video to begin with? You're obviously not subscribed to me since you can't stand my voice for more than 10 seconds. It's the truth! It really is! Am I the only person that cannot listen to this pretentious ass for more than 10 seconds? Of course I'm pretentious. I'm a British prisoner. What more do you expect from me? Anyway, I'll just refresh this page real quick, but as you can see, it's the brain work with me here. It's the Reddit post for my video. God, we're an hour in already. This is probably going to be all night uploading, but, you know, I feel like I need to do this. Alright, let's go from the top then. While I usually prefer games physically, we aren't in a position to be saying no physical, no buy when a company basically forgot the Vita even exists until now. I'll buy this to show Square Enix that there's an audience for Vita for their games. I'll buy it physically on PS4, but we'll play this on Vita. If you're interested in builders, get it digitally or wait for Asia English around the same time, and he agrees with me. Thank you! But that is the truth, isn't it? Like, that's the main point I made the original video in the first place, because we don't really have the room to be picky and choosy. PS4, definitely. The PS4 sold like 30 million units at this point. It's getting an updated release in the next few months. And it's going to be making games for years. Like, it's on the same track to be on the PS2 and PS3 support. And PS3 support is only dying down now. So, yeah. Well, I mean, technically it died down a little bit ago, but at the same time, we got Yakuza 5 a couple of months ago, so there's still some support going on out there, so, you know, they're gonna be fine. Us? Not really. We're really not. Parable Visions says, he's not wrong. The cost of publishing Vita games physically, at least in the West, simply doesn't make sense now when you factor in the publisher's required return of interest on the product, and the Vita having such a small player base. Releasing digitally allows publishers to minimize their sales risk. If a publisher is required by the card manufacturers to place an order for 90,000 copies of a game to be produced and distributed, then they only sold 10,000 of them while needing 40,000 to break even, it simply doesn't work. Due to the Vita's small Western player base, the risk of physical sales is much higher due to the returns needed. The way physical releases make sense on the Vita in the West now is through limited edition runs, where the publisher can charge a premium for the product and sell a couple of thousand copies of the game to get a positive return on interest. The digital physical topic is purely a business decision by publishers. Releasing digitally is simply a way to minimize risk. People seem to forget that the games industry is a business, and these developers and publishers need to do whatever it takes to return a profit, which makes a fair amount of sense. It's just, yeah, it really does. But then the guy right below makes the same comment I made earlier. The only way physical releases make sense on the Vita in the West now is through limited edition runs, and this is what people are mainly asking for, and that's I can't be 100% sure if this is what people think, because there is the idea that limited edition runs can only be made in like 3,000, 4,000 copies, for example, at the very beginning when the game comes out, but then when they're gone, and they become rarer than hen's teeth. I really shouldn't say hen's teeth. Not only am I badly trying to copy actions, but that makes no fucking sense. There's millions of hens. But at the same time, like, Retro City Rampage DX only had like 1,000 or so Vita copies, and they were all gone within minutes. You'll never be able to get another copy of that, so imagine a bunch of people who want to buy games later. I don't know if we're talking about the people who want the games to be physical overall all the time, or just the sort of people who'd like to buy it for their collections and stick them up on their shelf and all that. Sure, a one print physical run release would satisfy half of those people, but God knows how big the other half are. And I use halves very loosely because you never know if one side's going to be like 10%, one side's going to be like 90%. You know what I mean? Limited Run Games said that make a Vita physical game is 6 times more expensive than the PS4. Well, it's not. It's like 3 or 4. But at the same time, the same sort of run, it's still kind of ridiculous. Sony really shot themselves in the foot on that one. Like, God, if you want to blame anyone for half the mistakes that are being made here, blame Sony. From comments, it seems like people that don't really know how the industry works don't care. They want whatever they want and refuse to accept any business-related compromise like digital only. Like with Digimon signing a petition to bring a game over, then boycotting it. There was a boycott on Digimon? I never heard about this. Fair question. Hang on. Cyber Sleuth boycott. Huh. I guess there was nothing really to... Yeah. I don't know, maybe it was, maybe it's just that guy lying or stretching the truth. I don't know, move along. I don't know why people get all shitty and defensive about no physical, no buy. Should we somehow feel sorry for big publishers like Square Enix and Tecmo Koei that skip a retail release yet charge the exact same price digitally, or in the case of Europe, even more? Well, yeah, admittedly, charging even more for the same game is ridiculous, and maybe they could afford to charge... Maybe they could afford to charge less, because, again, when you don't have physical copies that come into the mix, then GameStop can't get pissed off about it, but at the same time, how much copies might they be expecting to sell? Maybe they got pleasantly surprised, or maybe they're just following the trend. Like, you know, releasing a full retail game is just what people do, because... You know, I mean, I don't go on, like, dollar per hour in terms of, like, how much I think a game is worth my time. But at the same time, if I'm going to be paying $40 for a game that only goes for a couple of hours, that's not going to be worth it to me. Like, unless the game is extremely, extremely good. But even then, it's just like, you know, think about it in the sense that the game is probably worth spending the money to support a niche game localizer supporting a niche business. But then again, it's Square Enix we're talking about. Speaking of which, I wonder what's going to happen with World of Final Fantasy, since they don't seem to like physical releases. Who knows? I already talked about that in the last video, though. When digital games cost the same as physical ones, I want the physical game because I can resell it when I'm done playing. That's not going to change for me until there's a used digital games market, which will never be, by the way. There's no way you can make that work, because... You'd just be taking money out of someone's pockets after you're done playing the game, which is, well, then again, I guess, it's a tough way of putting it, but at the same time, it's just like, it kind of sucks that the used game market as a thing exists, because you want to be giving money to the developers of the game, right? You want to be giving it to them and not to other people who already bought a copy of it, because, you know, if you like a game, you want to go buy a copy of it, and maybe you would. Maybe you'd go and buy a fresh copy of, like, Mass Effect if you liked it. Let me think of something that isn't ridiculous. Maybe you'd go and want to buy a copy of Earth Defense Force if you found out you liked it by buying someone else's used copy of a game, because, you know, you want to support the developer. It's just... I never really liked the idea of used games mainly because of that. Like, maybe if they were... Well, then again, these days there are lots of sales and stuff like that, especially on the digital market, so eventually you might be able to get them, but at the same time, as I already mentioned previously in this video, if you don't buy the game within the first month, you're not in the consideration pool of getting another game localized. One of the other comments on this. Too bad Microsoft got murdered when they tried to do that. Well, it was their fault. Always online DRM is ridiculous, especially for a console. I was all for Microsoft's original vision for Xbox One. I still think Kinect should have been mandatory. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is just an Xbox shill who decided to poke. No, it's not. It's Neo. He's actually around here a lot. What's it? Has he not used a Kinect? I've tried to use a Kinect. It doesn't work. It's never worked. Oh well, moving along. In Canada, the PSN price is the same, except you're paying CAD with the bad dollars and there's a 25% off. Huh, lucky them. The currency is always a bit of a pain in the ass. Like, I used to be able to get US cards for cheaper than the equivalent, and by that I mean $50 to 50 AUD dollars. But now it costs like $65 to get a $50 card. It's really frustrating. So, yeah, I have to pay a lot for my games. For me, the problem with big digital games is price. In Europe, physical games are €35-39, and when I see a digital game with that price, for me and a lot of people will think it's too expensive, no box, no card. That's the main problem. They should be cheaper. An example, Attack on Titan will be only digital. I'm grateful with card because they bring the Vita version, but its price will be €40. This actually reminds me of the Ashen's video that he did, where he was in the United Kingdom, and on the very launch of the Vita, FIFA Football cost like £55, and you could find it for like 40 or even less on what if you shopped around. And pounds is like £1 is like $2 or something like that. It's pretty heavily weighted towards the pound side, so it's kind of ridiculous. Like, you should be charging exactly the same as retail, not more. That is ridiculous. I absolutely agree with you on that one. But if they're charging the same as retail, even if there's no physical copy, it's not that bad. But at the same time, you can make a somewhat fair argument that says, they should be charging less. But anyway, we'll move along. Seeing as memory for the Vita is always at a premium, my stance is if you're offering something that is digital only for the platform that has physical releases on other platforms and territories, then I either am going to wait for a sale or import. I guess this makes sense, but at the same time, you can back up your stuff to the computer. You can back it up to a PlayStation 3. Can't back it up to a PlayStation 4. I don't know why they didn't bother to get around to implementing that, because it really does seem like the PS4 used the Vita as a crutch for its first year or so, and then just forgot about the Vita once that was done. So, it's really like, why didn't they bother implementing that stuff on the PlayStation 4 in the first place? I really wish they did. It would have made things a lot more simpler, but they didn't. So, bugger it. I mean, I guess I don't want to be like the sort of stuck-up person. Like, I know I said things about stuck up, and there's a comment here that I really want to get around to replying to, and I already did, but we'll get to that. I don't want to seem stuck up by saying you should learn to manage your memory card space a bit more, but at the same time, I had to learn how to do it. I mean, I had a 64 gig at one point, and I had a 32 gig, and I still had to learn to manage my space. I have 15 gig free on the Vita right now that I would love to fill up with miscellaneous games that I'd love to get around to playing at some point, but I don't want to because I have to load new games on every time new ones come out, and then I got to play through them. And while that's not relevant to your situation is more along the lines of, well, I've got all these games I want to play. I should only keep one or two on at a time and play them one or two at a time, and then just move them off and move other ones on when I'm done. And I admit that's annoying and that's a bit of a pain, but at the same time, it's nowhere near as much of a pain in the ass as like swapping accounts and formatting your memory card every time you do and stuff like that, right? I mean, I feel sorry for people who have to go through this, by the way. I really do. I understand how much of a pain in the ass it is. I'm so neurotic about my hard drive space, for example, that I have to go through it every week or so and clean up files that I don't need anymore and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a problem. I fully admit it's a problem. It's just, all I can say is learn to manage it. If you've got a 16 gig memory card or something like that that can hold a few games, learn to manage your space. It's a very useful tactic. Very useful thing to learn. Very useful thing to do. Learn to try and play just one or two games at a time. That sort of focus will help you keep committed, and it'll help you decide whether or not you're actually having fun with the game or not. If you're not having fun with the game, upload the save to the cloud, move it off to the hard drive, move another game back on. Really. It's a good way to manage your gaming time and figure out what you really want to play and what you really don't want to. So, useful thing to learn. Moving on. Whoa, 30 minutes. Not the whole video wasn't 30 minutes. I'm sorry, mate. I know you love to hear my voice. God, I really need to stop being such a stuck-up prick, don't I? I like digital games, but if people don't buy a game because there's no physical release, then fine, that's entirely their decision. But no physical, no buy is not a stupid argument. The real stupid argument is they're ruining it for everyone else. Think about that. At one point, those who bought physical copies of games used to be the majority, and me, the person willing to buy a digital copy of a game over a physical one, was ruining it for them. Here's the thing. As I replied here, how were you ruining it for the digital game people when you bought the game physically? this is a completely different situation to what we have now, where if you don't buy digital copies of games that are digital only, you might not get the next ones. As I said here, the difference is that not buying the digital copies this time might result in games not coming over at all. Physical doesn't lose anything by digital existing, which was the problem back then. People complained about the lower prices, but that didn't happen for obvious reasons. And as I have stated in this video previously, the obvious reason was GameStop. Thankfully, I think the bigger risk is that games get those weird Western exclusive PlayStation 4 ports as the only localization, or digital only Vita and that. That made the sales reasonable enough for Cyber Sleuth apparently, and Axis even got acquired to do it for Aegis of Earth. Really? I didn't know that, but yeah, the PlayStation 4 isn't actually that popular in Japan right now. At least I think it was. Like, the last time I remember reading something about this was 6 months ago, but at the same time, the PS4 really isn't that popular in Japan because home consoles just aren't that popular because Japanese apartments and stuff are actually really small in comparison to pretty much everywhere else on the planet. So they don't really have much room for anything outside of portable games, and that's why PC is arguably one of the least popular ways to game over there. It's been getting better in recent years, but at the same time, it is still one of the least popular things over there because you need a gigantic-ass black box, which might not fit in most people's apartments. So, yeah, it's that's why handheld gaming is so popular. It's the only reason that it still exists over here, and it's probably one of the main reasons Sony will ever consider if they're going to do a Vita 2 or a PSP 3. Basically, it's just going to be Japan wants it, and then people over here can do it cheaper. Like, imagine if Sony made first-party games just for Japan, and then we got people like Xseed or Marvelous, as they're somewhat known now, or Axis or Atlas to publish those games, like Orishika or Gravity Rush or Killzone, you know, stuff like that. Imagine if they made Japanese first-party games and then other people got to translate them. Imagine if we had that. That would be an interesting market to be in for a PSP 3, but, you know, I don't think that's going to happen either way, but we'll continue on anyway. But yeah, PS4 ports. Admittedly, if a PS4 port has to happen to get Vita games over here, I'm all for it. Like, absolutely. There's no reason not to have that happen. I mean, it was a little bit disappointing back when Shin Gundam Musu came out, and we only got Dynasty Warriors Gundam Reborn on the PlayStation 3, which I still haven't gotten around to playing, by the way, and chances are I probably never will, because there's a goddamn Musu game, and those take years. Alright, but we'll move on. If Square Enix can't afford to... I can't see the whole comment. If Square Enix can't afford to do a minimum order physical run, something like 1,500 to 2,000 cartridges, then I won't be getting their games. Sure, the profit margins aren't great, but it will satisfy a group of gamers who prefer physical as opposed to digital. Yeah, same argument. You know, you can't really argue with that. We are getting into the repetitive arguments, which is why I didn't wait like 24 hours to do this instead of like 6. Well, it's why I didn't wait. It's why I waited 6 hours to do this instead of 24. Because some of the same arguments kept reappearing. So, you know, moving along. This is the one comment that kind of upset me, which is why I did a relatively long reply. I used to look out for Blue Maximus videos whenever I was looking into a new game, was unsure whether or not to get it, but he's really lost my respect with this video. Too long, didn't watch. If you only buy physical games on the video, you're a stuck-up arsehole with stupid opinions. Way to insult people for choosing to spend their own money in a different way than you do. This guy's got a point. I really did come on a bit strong at the end of my last video, but as I said in the comment here, I probably should have phrased it a bit better. And by probably, I mean, yeah, I should have. Really, I should have. Like, if you're capable of buying digital-only games and playing digital-only games, because, you know, I'll add that just on the end there, but don't, or something like that. That poor guy in the YouTube comments that only gets $40 extra spend every couple of months, poor bastard doesn't deserve that. Yeah, because I did indirectly call that guy a stuck-up asshole, and for that, I'm sorry. I didn't see where his argument was coming from, right? So, you know, I apologize for that. That is something worth being sorry about. But I'm going to read this paragraph exactly as I've written it here. And as much as of an asshole as I appeared in that last video, just, you know, give me a chance to explain how I felt when I was saying that. I'm not going to lie, though. I think it's stuck up to do that on principle. When you're capable of buying and playing the game normally when the Vita's in a bad place. Especially if you claim to support the Vita. I get the mental image of one of those pictures of someone smashing their Android phone they got for their birthday instead of an iPhone. The mental image of saying, oh hey, I love the Vita. Sure, I'd buy more games for it. No physical? What do you take me for, a peasant? And that is legitimately how I feel about it. I'm not going to lie, because lying is the worst thing I think I can do when I'm trying to be a pro-consumer person, right? Because if I lie to the consumer, then what's the point of existing, right? To be Polygon. But at the same time, it's just... It's when you've got people who are fully capable of buying the memory card, of buying the games at full price on digital, and then just not doing it because they support something, again, when we have to be really picky, when they're trying to be picky and choosy in a time when we really can't afford to be. Because if Vita games stop getting good sales, then we probably aren't going to see any more of them, and that'd be a horrible thing to happen next year or something like that. So, that's, I like to think I've made my point, so we'll just move on to the rest. This video is going to be an hour and a half long. Jesus Christ. He already, thank God, that comment down there that's highlighted in blue was one that I've already gone over. Well, I never really cared if a game is digital or physical, since I just want games, play, and be entertained. Though sometimes I care very minimally to the point of uncaring, because if a game is huge and it's digital only, I might feel a bit more cautious of whether or not I want to buy it. And I mean, feeling cautious is fine. It really is. I mean, if you've only got a 16 gig memory card and you want to buy the new BlazBlue, which is like 5.5 gig all up, and I'm not talking about the new BlazBlue they announced for PS4 and PS3, not Vita again, but if you want to buy games for that, if you want to buy a game on a 16 gig memory card, it's 5.5 gig all up, then yeah, I can understand why you'd be a little bit causous. Because I don't need to delete a few games, I still might want to play in the process of being the huge one, and also need to re-download the deleted ones. But the guy doesn't appear to know how to transfer games to the PC. So if I like the game a lot and it's only stays permanently in there, so I currently only have one that reached such status, and that's Soul Sacrifice Delta. If I like a big game and I have less space for other games, that's leaving me less to choose at any given moment. Yeah, that is a bit of a problem with digital management, but at the same time, this guy doesn't appear to know that you can use Content Manager to back up your stuff to your computer, so kind of irrelevant, but then again, the guy might not have a computer. This might be a mobile phone. Who knows? TLDR, he just wants games. Fine by me. And, of course, the guy who calls me the greatest has been downvoted into the ground for the final comment. Blue Maxima is the greatest. The only reason I go to YouTube anymore is to watch his videos, and I 100% agree with his argument. People are always posting pictures of their local store's Vita sections, which are empty or only include 1 or 2 games. Yes, you may be able to buy it physically online, but that will start to fade with less stores willing to carry these items and just won't sell. It is a waste of money for the publisher. Putting it out digitally is a smart way to go. The Vita is the pointless life where getting a memory card or two is mandatory to be able to get the games that are coming out in 2016. I understand the complaint people have, but that is the way the systems marketplace has landed. And admittedly, that's actually a pretty good comment to end off on, because it really is where the Vita's ended up. We're getting a lot of games digital only, and the ones that are getting physical releases are pretty few and far between, because there just aren't that many big stores, any big sections for Vita anymore. So this is just the way the market's going, and it's like, if you're here and you want to hold on to this sort of belief, even if you can afford to buy the memory card, buy the game, and, play it on your Vita, if you want to hold on to this sort of belief after that, you're not going to have any sort of positive, well, you're not going to have much positive effect on this community at the very least. If you're not going to be buying games that come out digital only, then you may well be the reason we don't get any more games anymore. So it's just, what do you want us to do? Like, sure, physical runs that for 2,000, 3,000 copies, just, for physical collectors, would be great, but the publishers don't even seem to want to do that, so God only knows. But it's like, do you really want these guys to be printing out full print runs of games that cost extreme amounts of money, thanks to Sony, only to sell a fraction of what they print, and then just have the rest sitting around and a lot of money wasted? Do you really want, game publishers to do that? Because that's not what they want. And maybe if you want a special Vita physical version, maybe you could send in stuff on social media, but I'm not entirely sure how you'd get that to happen. I mean, I know XSEED does it, and, telling a social media person to go look at that and try and do that with a game that your publisher's PR, that you're doing PR for, is doing, is just, that would be a decent thing to do, but at the same time, again, petitions and stuff and all things like that don't usually work that well, but, that's just the way things go, isn't it? Then again, It did get Final Fantasy Type O to happen, even if it didn't show up on the Vita, and it did get Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth to happen. So who knows? Maybe you could do the same sort of thing for physical production runs, or maybe if limited run games manage to get in the back doors of different companies and say like, hey, we're willing to publish your games for you physically as a sort of limited collector's item, then maybe that would work. Maybe someone needs to send limited run games a bit of a note and say, hey, publish these games for us. Please publish these games for us. But or let us publish these games for you, please. Something like that. But yeah, other than that, it's I really don't have anything else to say. I did reply to all of these comments, and, you know, I imagine it's just going to be the same arguments made again over the next few hours. So when this video comes out tomorrow, maybe people will see a little bit better where I'm coming from, and maybe they'll be a little bit more, not so much friendly, but a little bit more, not so much accepting either, like tolerant of my viewpoint, since I'm not calling everyone an asshole this time, imprecisely doing broad strokes on a group of people. I realize the irony in me saying that you shouldn't paint people in broad strokes, and then me painting people in broad strokes now. Jesus, I'm an idiot. But yeah, this has been Blue Maxima. I'm amazed you sat through that whole thing. I'll see you all next time.